welcome to the Bias Buzz. I'm Don Irvine. He's Brian McNichol.
Good morning.
Good morning. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was excellent.
You
Long weekend of basketball afterwards. Coached 8 games the last 2 days, so I'm glad to be sitting down.
You did fairly well. You didn't win the title, I guess?
No, we were second. We lost to a team that was third in the nation last spring. So
close, but no cigar.
No, yeah, good, but very good competition.
That's good. That's a way to help sharpen your skills too a lot. Okay, so some trending topics. This is National Day on two fronts. It's National French Toast Day and Cyber Monday. Take your pick. Take both. I don't know.
I've never really understood French toast. I like eggs and I like pancakes, and that sort of marries the two. So you would think I would like it, but it's just like doesn't do much for me on either count. As for Cyber Monday, I think every day is Cyber Day now. And one of the interesting things about that is the post office makes, it loses $5 billion a year. But it would lose $15 billion a year if it weren't for delivering packages, right? The order. So that's like their big thing now.
Yeah, and they have these agreements, these contracts, I guess, with Amazon and everything like that, where they kind of
money losing in almost every case. They lose money on Amazon. They lose money on doing the last mile for FedEx and UPS too.
Yeah, but there's, just the boom in orders. The Black Friday probably was going to be a very big payoff for that. I definitely ordered a few things, but I ordered a few things that were just kind of expensive. Hopefully they'll all work the way I want them to work, and it's not just my tech side saying, I have to get the latest toys and everything like that. Now French toast, I like French toast. I don't eat a lot of French toast, but I do like French toast. I would say I don't necessarily understand it, but I like it. I just put lots of syrup on it, I'm fine.
Maybe I'm thinking too much.
Overthinking the French toast. And then just a nod to Florence Henderson, who passed away last week. Someone I grew up on the Brady Bunch. I probably have watched every episode, and it was a great cast, and so it she was just in the audience for Dancing with the Stars just days before that. So I guess it was kind of a surprise. It wasn't like anybody expected her to be ill and then pass away.
Right, and she epitomized that show. She was in all the reunions and all the attempted comebacks and rehashes of it, and was really close to a lot. I know there's her and Greg, I guess, had an affair at some point or whatever, but was really close to a lot of the people on that show who viewed her as a mother kind of figure. So it was good casting for one thing, because a lot of people looked at her and thought, suburban mom, there it is.
Yeah, she probably was, for a lot of us, the kind of the iconic suburban mom of that era. There'd been others in the 50s and the 60s, but this is kind of late 60s through 70s, and I think a lot of people just have a fondness in their heart for Florence Henderson, for a lot of good reasons. All right, so then now the news that really seems to be dominating is the death of Fidel Castro at age 90, after what comes to nearly 60 years of rule there. Though he ceded power theoretically to his brother Raul about 10 years ago, but it was still the Castro brothers show.
Right, and it'll be interesting to see what happens, because the power, even though he had formally transferred it and so forth, lied in him, not in Raul. So what happens to Raul? He's fine today. He's fine a month from now. But 6 months from now?
He's 85,
He's
right?
85. And, is there anyone else who wants to run Cuba, present another vision for the country? I think the people are receptive to that at this point. I think we look completely stupid now for lifting the sanctions. Right, at this point, because if we had kept that down, it would have been wide open for a solution that Americans could really embrace and help with. And now it's likely to be an heir of the Castros.
Right. It makes it a little bit tricky for Trump. So I'm going to, one of the things that came out too were the statements by the president and as well as by Donald Trump. So I'm going to read. This is from Obama. So at this time of Fidel Castro's passing, we extend a hand of friendship to the Cuban people. We know that this moment fills Cubans in Cuba and the United States with powerful emotions, recalling the countless ways in which Fidel Castro altered the course of individual lives, families, and of the Cuban nation. History will record and judge the enormous impact of the singular figure on the people and world around him. For nearly 6 decades, the relationship between the United States and Cuba was marked by discord and profound political disagreements. During my presidency, we have worked hard to put the past behind us, pursuing a future in which the relationship between our two countries is defined not by our differences, but by the many things that we share as neighbors and friends, bonds of family, culture, commerce, common humanity. This engagement includes the contributions of Cuban Americans who have done so much for our country and who care deeply about their loved ones in Cuba. Today, we offer condolences to Fidel Castro's family, and our thoughts and prayers are with the Cuban people. In the days ahead, they will recall the past and also look to the future. As they do, the Cuban people must know that they have a friend and partner in the United States of America. Now, contrast that with Donald Trump's statement. Today, the world marks the passing of a brutal dictator who oppressed his own people for nearly 6 decades. Fidel Castro's legacy is one of firing squads, theft, unimaginable suffering, poverty, and the denial of fundamental human rights. While Cuba remains a totalitarian island, it is my hope that today marks a move away from the horrors endured for too long and toward a future in which the wonderful Cuban people finally live in the freedom they so richly deserve. Though the tragedies, deaths, and pain caused by Fidel Castro cannot be erased, our administration will do all it can to ensure the Cuban people can finally begin their journey toward prosperity and liberty. I join the many Cuban Americans who supported me so greatly in the presidential campaign, including the Brigade 2506 Veterans Association that endorsed me, with the hope of one day soon seeing a free Cuba. Vastly different takes on that.
Yeah, Obama tried to take credit for something. And it's a lot of them are anodyne like that. He was a leader of a country and for a long time. You know, it's not, I didn't say anything good, I didn't say anything bad. But the thing about it is, it's like, if you read, everybody's upset about Trudeau, what he said. He was a little more, he knew him a little better, right? He had met him at Trudeau's father's funeral. And so he was a little closer to endorsing him, but most of it was, acknowledging that a news event occurred without endorsement. But what people think of Fidel Castro, and this is, part of what has made Trump so successful, is he understands what the average guy thinks. And what the average guy thinks is, we just lost a brutal dictator who tortured his people, imprisoned his political enemies, mistreated his, ran his economy into the ground, and caused 60 years of suffering. That's what happened with Fidel Castro. That's what his life was. And that's who, that we have a president who recognizes that and starts from that point, I think is going to be a big advantage in this country.
Right. And you have, Obama's received quite a bit of criticism for his remarks because he didn't talk about what Trump talked about, right. the reality of the situation. I was at the gym on Saturday and was watching the TV go by there and, watching the closed captioning and Andrea Mitchell was talking about praising him in a way, saying all the great things he did in terms of the education system, the free health care. And then she goes, but he did wreck the economy. Yeah. Here's all these wonderful things. Oh, but by the way, he did wreck the economy.
Their growth numbers aren't where they are. It's like missing the point a little bit.
So, and the reaction from the Cuban Americans, I don't know, I kind of felt a little bit like Wizard of Oz, Ding Dong, the Wicked Witch is dead kind of a thing.
I mean, the exuberance, like Miami is just, nothing's getting done there today. It's not a work day there, because there's so many people are so happy about this, because they understand what it really means.
Yeah, and as you said before, the thing is that if Obama hadn't done trying to go and lift these they haven't lifted the sanctions yet, but he's trying to normalize the relations, allowing flights to go into Cuba and trying to do some other things. But they really didn't demand anything by doing so. I mean they're really kind of it's all give. It's not, there's
right and he was humiliated on the trip. I mean they dissed him every way they could when he was down there. Right, they made it. Because they had to show their people, hey, we still do what we do, and he doesn't understand that. He doesn't understand when the Chinese, made him walk out the back of the plane. This is what people are voting against. This is what people wanted to change, is the idea that you can just chump the U.S. president. I don't think people are going to chump the next one.
Yeah,
the way they did them.
If there's anything about this, is it probably even more thankful now based on this that Donald Trump will be in the White House and not Hillary Clinton.
That's right, because what we project to the world is about to change dramatically, and I think almost all for the better.
Yeah. So before we leave Fidel here, we also had, the infamous Colin Kaepernick. He managed to just make news. I mean, so he wore a T-shirt, as I understand. It had both Malcolm X and Fidel on the T-shirt, and he praised Fidel.
And then he had a truly ridiculous press conference where he was saying, well, it's, I'm all about the health care and the education. Really? You're all about, 4 wide receivers and, trying to keep your balance when you throw the ball downfield.
Well, I mean,
that's what you are. So he doesn't know about this stuff, and he just throws out leftist bromides and, and I read Malcolm, this and that. You don't know a thing about what you're – it was really ridiculous. He, and why is that? Why did he do this? Well, because how many weeks has it been since we talked about it, since he was on this list of things to talk about? About a month and a half, right? We sort of moved on. He kneels, whatever he does, who cares, right? But now, I'm back in the news. I said the most outrageous thing in America this week,
Right, yeah. And talking about, how great education, under Castro, versus all the prisons we build. And,
what are you talking about?
It made no sense whatsoever. But this is good. This is typical for Colin Kaepernick. I guess some of a little bit of justice was meted out though yesterday, right? Because he got the final play of the game. Yeah. Was that the final play of the game yesterday?
I don't know.
Or it was he was anyway. They could have tied the game, and who tackles him but Kiki Alonso?
Yeah, who was a
Cuban.
Cuban. That's right. That was good. I mean, and every time they lose, my Twitter and Facebook lights up with "Yay, they lost again." He's turned a whole nation against the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I think you have more empathy towards the Cleveland Browns than you do towards
Go Browns.
the 49ers.
And I hope they play the 49ers.
Yeah,
that would be the best.
That would be an interesting game, to say the least. All right, so now there's still a lot of talk about the Trump cabinet. Betsy DeVos has been picked as the education secretary. So, what I've seen in the media, maybe you've seen some other things as well, is there's been this kind of dark thing because, she's the school choice, person. So now the teachers' unions and the liberals they're just agog. I can't believe that this is happening and that, she's aligned with the people who are against homosexuals and a lot of all these things going in there. I mean, I thought at least when I first saw the pick, I thought it was a great pick.
I think it's a tremendous pick because it is, people are policy. And by naming her, he is saying we are not, the Department of Education under President Trump is going to be pro-educational choice. We have too many people, like I coach in some of these schools where no kids should go to school in those schools. I mean, they're dangerous. You can't go to the bathroom safely. And I don't mean people coming in and hitting you on the head. I mean the bathroom itself is dangerous. It's dangerous in there. And like there's one in Prince George's County where there's no way to wash your hands. I guess they were flooding the bathroom or whatever, so they just took out the sink. You can see on the wall where the plumbing was ready for it, right? But there's no way to wash your hands as a security measure. It's like we don't need that kind of security, and it's because they're unwilling to take the steps to make the bathroom work, right? And to say everybody should go there to protect teachers' unions or whatever is nonsense. Let's let all those models come out. Why can't kids go to, they're religious schools? If the parent chooses the religious school, why should the religious school be available only to the rich, right?
Right.
And I went to a Catholic all-boys high school, right? My parents weren't rich, but they did without other stuff to make that happen because it was important.
Yeah, I mean, we came very close to thinking about putting our kids in Catholic schools because of the education system. I mean, in Montgomery County here, this is a system that I grew up in, and it is still a great system overall. But we were running right into all that outcome-based education stuff that was going on. We were seeing friends of my children, their parents deciding as these changes were being made in the curriculum, they were starting to pull their kids out and putting them into parochial schools and things like that, looking for alternatives. Now, parochial schools were the only alternative really in Maryland because Maryland, being such a heavily liberal democratic state, refuses to allow school choice of any kind to really take effect. I mean, the free market should determine this, but the teachers' unions have been, they're so entrenched, they're so powerful, and when you have a liberal state like that, they don't see the need to do that, but parents are clamoring. I mean, I still remember having just casual conversations. I remember a friend of mine once said to me, she says, why doesn't the Mormon Church have schools for on that level? And they have colleges, universities, right, but they don't have anything for high school or for middle school or anything like that, the primary education. And I kind of explained what I thought. I mean, it's a very tough road to actually create that,
right.
But there's a demand for something else where people are saying we need an alternative.
Right. And one of the things that's happening here is like Valerie Strauss had a thing in the Post, and like what they're counting on, what the left is counting on, is for her to do this and it to fail, and people to clamor for public schools. I don't see that happening. I worked for Tom Davis. We were fighting every year to get funding for the D.C. Opportunity Scholarship Fund. D.C. has the only federally funded scholarship fund in the country, where kids can go to the private schools. All the private schools in D.C. Offer up spots for this, right? And there's, it's like 1,200 applicants for each spot. So you can't say there's not demand, right? The demand totally outstrips the supply. And if somebody comes along and says, here's how to grow the supply, here's how to grow accountability in education, I don't see there being a case against that. I think enough parents are looking at what's going on in schools today and saying there has to be some better way, and it's definitely worth trying.
Right, and as I recall, because I think I attended a press conference for this when they were talking about renewing this, was that Kevin Chavis and even Juan Williams were in support of this.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing here, this is not a black versus white issue. These are people who are interested in the kids.
Hey, we have these meetings at Heritage, right? Because Phil Trueluck was deeply involved in this in D.C. And, I mean, it was all kind of people that you would never think you would see on the inside of the Heritage Foundation coming to these meetings because they're interested in this. Other thing, just from a sports perspective, because we discuss sports here a lot, is
we love sports.
We love sports. Okay, there is something called the Washington Catholic Athletic Conference, which is the league of all the Catholic high schools all around the Beltway. What has happened is the Virginia schools, Bishop Ireton, O'Connell, Paul VI, so forth, have essentially dropped out. They're in it for basketball and a few other things, but like they're out of the football. And the reason is because in Virginia, the public schools are good enough and not union controlled enough to where they're viable alternative. So that it's hard for Virginia to get the best players. In Montgomery County, almost all the best players are in one of those Catholic schools. Good Counsel or, the other ones. So, I mean, and that's why those schools dominate the way they do, is because of poor public schools in the areas they're drawn from.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. The other cabinet thing that's still floating out there, and there's just lots of noise, is Secretary of State. Now, we've talked about this before. It looked like Mitt was in the lead, and now Kellyanne Conway she's issued kind of a barrage of stuff as to why he shouldn't be. And now I see reports that Trump is furious about her saying those things. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I mean, do you think Mitt still has a chance, or where are we going?
It is interesting that that Kellyanne has publicly said what she said about this, right? That she's come out against it. But I think what's driving it is they are being deluged with people saying never Mitt. And I don't trust that when he gets in these other capitals and people say, what do you really think of him, that he's going to give the right answer. I think he looks like a Secretary of State if there ever was one, right? But I don't know that he is. But then the other question is, if not him, who, right? Bolton appears to be a little hard-edged for their taste, and perhaps for, the Senate's taste as well. Rudy seems like a hot mess. I don't know. I don't. It may be Mitt because they don't really have another person.
Yeah, and there are rumors too that one of the reasons that Mitt's name was floated up there to begin with was that the Trump people were trying to get Mitt to come around and make some kind of apology or some kind of concession that he was wrong or whatever.
Some kind of statement that he's not nuts.
Right. That he's he isn't unworthy of this and not a phony, that kind of thing like that. For which I don't think that Mitt's going to say that thing. I mean, if Mitt was going to say it, I think he would have already said it by now. So we have this huge question mark.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's like one thing, give me some other candidates. Another thing is the Obama administration has proven beyond that you can put about any rube in that job, and the president's running that department anyway, right? I mean, you're managing a department, but you're not. What the things the State Department says and does is directed from the White House.
Right. All right. One more thing on the cabinet here, and we bring in the Star Wars actor Mark Hamill. So he called it. He called the cabinet. It's a who's who of really despicable people. Yeah, my feeling is that first of all, he should just stick to acting, but this is Hollywood.
Yeah, I must confess, I had to look up who Mark Hamill was. 'Cause I'm not a Star Wars.
Oh, shame on
guy.
you! Rogue One is coming to theaters on December 16th, I think.
He will be there. But I did look it up, and I read the thing where what he said, and it's a thing that's hurting the left, and they need to come to terms with this. Is they're insane about this. The things they are saying to turn the debate is the same things they were saying during the campaign, which they lost, which they came from ahead to lose, right? Blew the lead. And that is, these people are crazy and deplorable and misogynist and racist and all this kind of stuff. It's like people have assessed that argument and rejected it, right? They've said, okay, we know what they are and we're okay with their public record. Okay, so if you want to argue with them, it's quit calling them names and start pointing out what they want to do and why it would be bad.
Right, and the thing is that I think the other side always talked about the name calling that the conservatives have done, but these guys
pales in comparison.
Yeah, but after this election, I mean, they're just throwing it out there willy nilly. So talking about insane, let's talk about Jill Stein and the vote recount. This has been an amazing story in the sense that she started with this fundraising campaign. I guess the initial goal was $3 million. She's bumped it to $7 million. I looked this morning; she's at $6.2 million. And one of the things about it too is that what money that we raise that we don't spend on these vote recount efforts will be used for voter integrity projects, whatever that means in her mind. To me, that says.
I read something. There's something about cooking marijuana. Some of it, some kind of cooking marijuana meeting, how to cook marijuana or whatever. That's part of this. They're going to defer some of the money. They have this money, and they're going to, they're not going to spend it all on these election things.
Right. Well, because what I've seen so far is that Wisconsin, you need 1.1 million to do the filing to be able to make them move to the next step and everything like that. You need far less money in Michigan and Pennsylvania.
But it's still like 500 or 400,000.
Yeah, but we're talking all told. It's maybe a couple $1 million for that. They're saying, oh, well, it might cost us a few $1 million in legal fees and things like that. So they're trying to pump it up, trying to say, we're going to need all this money. But in the end, the other part of it, too, is that, like in Pennsylvania, they have to prove, that there's something, irregularity, before that would even go forward. The voter discrepancy numbers on Pennsylvania, 70,000, that's too large. It's 20-some thousand, I think, in Wisconsin, 11,000 in Michigan. They're still not going to find that many votes.
Right. No election with that big a margin has ever been overturned with a recount.
Yeah.
So it's an impossible thing they're trying to do.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's not impossible if you start cooking the books and playing with the numbers and so forth. And what has happened is this guy says that, she's 7% better, and this is the richest Schadenfreude of the entire election season, is that these votes on computerized machines, right, don't add up. It's like the 7% more successful in those. Now, what we don't hear is are those machines in Trump country? Are they in outer suburbs where he was going to do well anyway? I don't know where in Wisconsin they use those kind of voting machines, right? Probably not downtown Milwaukee. I know I wouldn't do that in downtown Milwaukee. And it's the Democrats have done everything they can to make it difficult to tell who votes and how they voted, right? And now there's a big block of votes that you can't prove who they voted and how they voted, and that's the ones they want to contest.
Right. So and then she's raised more money in this than she had during her entire campaign, which is crazy. And then you have Hillary. The Clinton people said, "Well, we're going to join this," even after the White House has said we don't see any evidence of any irregularity, nothing significant here going on like this. And even the Clinton people I think before were basically, they've accepted these results. We're going to move on, and yet now they come back and they say, well, we'll join this effort. It made me think at first is that, was Jill Stein their stalking horse?
Well, for one thing, I think that she's trying to pay off her debt, right? For another, what the Clinton people said is they were going to put lawyers in the room to watch this go down. I don't blame them for that. Trump should too. I hope the Republicans are sending people to watch this as well, because you could start seeing votes pile up otherwise. So I don't really hold them at fault for doing it, but I do think that why are they raising all this money is these people want to stop Trump, and this is the last viable chance.
Yep. All right, so let me ask you about this. So what about this? Now Trump has come out, and now he's talking about millions have voted illegally. Okay, personally, I'm not buying this. The person who started this, based on what I've seen, has zero credibility. But the story's caught on like wildfire, and we're getting reports in terms of at least Trump making these accusations and things like that. I don't know where all this is really coming from. I mean, there probably are some people who are illegals that did vote, because you've got a state as big as California, something like that. It's not going to be foolproof, but to say that there are enough votes there that he would have won the popular vote
of California,
total of overcoming a 2 million vote deficit. That's pretty tough.
But all the margin is in California. If you took California's votes completely out of the system, hers and his, then he would win pretty easily in the overall vote total. There's a place that he didn't campaign,
right,
but that she and they did, right? Because they, there's a lot of money there for them and so forth. As for Virginia, I don't know. They were registering dead people and so forth. There were several irregularities caught, right? And how much was not caught? How much was not detected? So I don't know about millions. And again, and if you watch the results come in that night, he was ahead by 5 or 6 points and then lost by 3. So you're talking about late suspicious votes. Now, my understanding is that my part of the state, Northern Virginia, was the last to be counted, and of course that's that's Democrat, but it's not that democratic,
right,
that it should have thrown a 9-point wrench into the thing. So I'm not, that one I would like to know more about.
I just think that Trump should have just left that alone. I mean, he's won the election. I think it's time to kind of move on. You don't really need to throw that into the mix.
But he has a knack for tossing markers at just the right places where, when you go back and look at it, he's like, yeah, I told you.
Yeah, he maybe come back to be proven right, or at least somewhat right on this. All right, so let's do the 2-minute warning.
Down in my home state, Ed Orgeron emerged as the football coach at LSU. I'm happy about that. He is a home state guy. He speaks the language literally and figuratively, speaks with a heavy Cajun accent, understands the Cajun French. He was the head coach at Ole Miss for 3 years. He was 12-20. He micromanaged everything. He went away. It's kind of like Buck Showalter. He went away. He had failure. Went away. Assessed what happened to him. Every chance he's gotten since then, he's been more successful at. They got in a deal where they were trying to get Tom Herman from Houston. He ended up at Texas. And I think they ended up with the right guy. And if he can keep the coaching staff, and the big thing in college football is, who's on your team. And, I think if he can keep the recruiting class together and so forth, I think they did the right thing.
Great. So I'm going to just finish with Francois Fillon, which I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. So he won the runoff on the conservative side in France. So he'll be running for president. Francois Hollande, I guess, will also try to run. But as a leftist, the socialist, he's pretty much, no one likes him anymore. He's had his turn in the sun. And then we have Marine Le Pen, who's really from the far right. So it'll be between the two of them. I think he stands a good chance. This guy is a pretty amazing guy. I didn't know anything about him before he had actually, gotten through that last phase last week. And he's basically a Margaret Thatcher type of person.
Yeah, I think we like him.
Yeah, he wants to cut back on all these pensions for the workers, increase the work week. He wants to cut 100 billion euros out of the public budget, public spending budget. That's a lot of money. I mean, it may be actually tough to get him elected in a sense if the left says, "Oh, look at this guy, he's going to take away everything that we've given you," but something has to be done in France.
Yeah, and I think you've got a guy who's willing to do it, break a few eggs.
All right. So that's it for our last Bias Buzz podcast of the month. We'll see you next week at our regular time, and thanks for joining us.